Hello, and welcome to the RevOps Show. While this show is anchored on RevOps, we're taking a look into the marketing world for a bit today to discuss something that makes Doug a bit salty: marketing automation. Is marketing automation a waste of time? Why does this concept leave a bitter taste in Doug's mouth? We'll dive into these questions and more today on this episode. So if you're a marketer, strap in, we're going for a ride. And if you're not a marketer, it's worth listening to from a data standpoint. So with that, let's get into it.
Jess!
Doug!
Do you know what Tuesday is?
Oh, yeah, holy cow. I do actually know what Tuesday is. Woo! 7 years.
How old are you, Jess? I'm 7.
Old enough.
7 years old.
7 lift years old, yes.
So what's it like to have a 7-year vacation?
I wouldn't know, Doug. I wouldn't know.
What do you mean?
It's been like a 7-year war.
7-year war. Wow.
It's like my Vietnam.
Holy.
Not really.
Well, you know what, Jess? For the occasion, you know what I have for you?
What do you have? I guess I deserve that.
You did. But I'll make it up for you.
All right.
Professor McConaughey.
Professor McConaughey. So we made it through the offsite, Jess.
We did. Barely. We were a little tired last week.
Apparently we were overplanned and not planned enough.
Based on the feedback, that's what I heard, yes.
So, next offsite at Disney?
I told you I'm down. You know I'm down for that. Let's do it. Don't make promises.
I think you said don't toy with me or don't play with me or something. What was
something like that? Don't tease me.
Don't tease me. Yeah. I don't know, that's viable. Disneyland or Disney World?
Probably World. I would probably pick World. It's probably I'm probably saying that because it's the one I'm more familiar with. So
that means I have to go to Florida.
That does mean you have to go to Florida. Sunny Florida.
God's
also, we're planning a Disney World or Disneyland trip next year, so I could potentially go to Disney World and Disneyland.
Which one are you going to Disneyland?
We're looking at fall of next year.
Fall, that would be October?
Like in September or October.
October?
Yeah.
Okay, so it won't be our next thing. But why don't we just do an offsite while you're there? Then you can...
Yeah, Juan will be thrilled about that. He'll be so excited. Two birds, one stone.
What is there not to be excited about? I know what there is to be excited about.
What?
Our topic today.
It's a beautiful segue. Excellent podcasting.
I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
Our topic's got me a little salty.
I knew it would. I'm not gonna say that's why I didn't. That's not why I picked it, because I knew it would get you a little bit fired up on a Friday.
All right, Jess. So what is our topic today?
Is marketing attribution a waste of time? That's what I want to talk about.
Yes. Okay. We're done. What else do you want to talk about?
Your answer is yes to that question. Sweet. We solved it. Shortest podcast ever.
Oh, there have been shorter podcasts, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. So where I want to start is I want to talk about what is marketing attribution. So according to HubSpot, marketing attribution is a reporting strategy that allows marketers and sales teams to see the impact that marketers made on a specific goal, usually a purchase or sale. Thoughts on that?
Let's take a look at what do others say marketing attribution.
That was pretty in line with what I saw across the board.
What is marketing? The short definition, put simply, marketing attribution is the analytical science of determining which marketing tactics are contributing to sales or conversions. Long definition, This is, by the way, from Marketing Evolution's website. Long definition: marketing attribution is the practice of evaluating the marketing touch points a consumer encounters on their path to purchase. The goal of attribution is to determine which channels and messages have the greatest impact on the decision to convert or take the desired next step. There are several popular attribution models, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. And then here from Wikipedia, in marketing attribution, also known as multi-touch attribution, is the identification of a set of user actions that contribute to a desired outcome, and then the assignment of a value to each of those events. All right. What else are we covering today?
Do you not want to talk about this topic? You keep trying to divert. So
I love the intent of marketing attribution. I hate its application.
Tell me more.
It is a wonderful idea to know if I push this button, what will happen. I want to build predictability into my go-to-market. I want to build predictability into my business.
Yep.
I want to know what's working and what's not working. Those are all worthy objectives. The difficulty is it's taking an approach. Well, it's why do I want to know those things? I want to know those things so that I can, well, I haven't said this in a while, Jess. I've noticed the last couple of days it's coming back into my rotation. Have you noticed that I have different phrases? They kind of go through rotations where I use them all the time. Then I go off using them. Then I use them all the time again, and so on and so forth. So the objective of this is to generate more juice for the squeeze.
Oh, it's my favorite Dougism.
Right. But have you noticed that's been out of the rotation for a while?
Yep, I have.
The problem is that we're taking an approach, we're taking a methodology that works in a very specific situation, and we're applying it to a much broader, far more complex situation. Additionally, what's happening is the net of it is it's the pursuit of precision rather than accuracy.
That's interesting. The pursuit of precision rather than accuracy.
And the other problem with it is it ends up being implemented as though we're managing our business. I used to talk about this in financial services all the time. You can't manage your future by looking in the rearview mirror.
Mm-hmm.
There may be truth to an attribution report, but the question is, what good is it doing you? How is that helping you? If you tell me what happened, that doesn't tell me what's going to happen, right?
But
so where does it work?
Doesn't that guide what you do? If you look at what I did, was it successful or not? Can't that help guide you on what to do next?
It can help guide you. So looking at the past and what's happening should feed your hypothesis.
Okay.
See, it goes back to our data metrics analytics conversation. It's a fundamental element of that, which is if you're using it to prompt questions, if you're using it to generate hypotheses that you're testing, then it's valuable, right?
Okay.
But when you're using it to answer questions, so here, what tactic generated the most business? Answer, we don't know.
Right.
What page generated the most business? I don't know. What does generate mean?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like where does marketing attribution work? Where is it really important? If you're Amazon and you're managing your store, it's really important. You're doing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of transactions a day. Every second, you've got multiple transactions that are happening. You've got a very linear path. It is very much of a hunter's path, right? Look, act, buy. Look at what is moving us to look. What has, if we show them, anchoring, if we show them a page that looks like this, does that then increase the likelihood that they act on a later page? Like all those things that they're able to do help to generate attribution that then really feeds into, right? But this idea that we're going to we're going to take what is, so like if you have a simple path, if you're in a simple linear path, then attribution is probably pretty good. It's probably fun. I get into a little bit of an issue when we started assigning dollar values. I think that to me is just, it begins to come down to entertainment.
Yeah. Okay. So why do people think that marketing attribution is so important? What is the promise of marketing attribution?
Well, again, it's a great promise. It's how do you know what works? How do you know what doesn't work? John Wanamaker, back in the 19th century, I think it was, late 1800s, is famous for saying, I know I'm wasting half my money on advertising. My problem is I don't know which half.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so here's where the fundamental flaw, and I will go on record right now and say this. I believe that marketing attribution has cost companies billions of dollars. I think marketing attribution, as it's been applied, has been applied and managed in a negative way. Right. And the underlying reason for that is modern marketing came along and said you no longer have to live in a world where you don't know which half of your advertising you're wasting, which half of your marketing spend you're wasting. You will be able to measure everything. That is how marketing automation got sold.
Mm-hmm.
You will now be able to measure everything. That's how search got sold. All of this stuff was measurement, right? And so why is marketing attribution this really popular hot topic? Well, because marketers, especially when times are tough, marketers regularly get asked by their CEOs, by their boards, what are you doing? Why are we spending all this money on marketing? What's the juice we're getting for the squeeze? Wait, we need to prove our, and here's the thing. So we're going to talk about different attribution models, but an easy attribution model, I don't think I'm giving anything away. I remember when HubSpot rolled out their attribution capabilities. We were in the alpha test group. And so I ran an analysis on our last touch conversion. And I found out something pretty interesting. I found out that 80% of our wins came from the same source, channel, engagement, touch.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that was? Sales email.
Okay.
But it was a specific sales email. It was a very.
I was trying to think of a piece of content that I would have thought of.
No, it's a piece of content.
Which
right?
Was there a breakup email?
Nope. No.
Okay.
This is the win. This is last touch before they sign the contract.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Ready?
Well, when you send the quote.
Here's the quote. Click here, sign, we're done. 80% last touch.
Yeah.
What monetary value do I put on that? I mean, I realized I showed the report. I said, hey, this is great. I got a hypothesis. We should just send all of our target accounts the quote email.
Yeah.
Okay, so we laugh. It's funny. I shared because it's funny.
I mean, right. But it highlights the ridiculousness of it all.
Right. By the way, the reason that this costs money is that first off, we're defining everything by the past. Secondly, we're pushing everything into this idea of linear. Oh my gosh, I'm going blank on his name. He talks about this a lot on LinkedIn. We'll get it in the show notes, but he dubbed the term dark funnel. So here's an example. Here's something that will show no attribution. You ready for what will show no attribution in our marketing game?
What?
This podcast shows no attribution. Maybe it can show a little bit of attribution because we do have the podcast on our website. But
right.
Here's a question. If we're looking for a source and you're on our website, did that really source it? Right?
Yeah.
If you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts, if you're listening to it where we are the number one RevOps show, Spotify, there's no attribution there.
Right.
Right. The fact that I include an excerpt in, right. So I cannot attribute any revenue to our podcasts.
Right.
I can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been podcasting for, gosh, we're coming up on probably 6 or 7 years now.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think you've been doing it almost since I've been here.
Do I think for a second that it hasn't contributed?
No, because we wouldn't be doing it.
Right.
Right.
We had when one of the last episodes of the Black Line podcast, we had Jason Akazar, and he's like, do you think someone opening or clicking your email, like, do you think that's actually contributing to taking action? And by the way, if you're looking for that and you're looking to try to get that attribution, then you're going to, hence clickbait. And he said, what would you rather have? Would you rather have 10 clicks or 2 responses?
Yeah.
Right. What am I looking for this to do? So there's this, the reason that marketing attribution exists, the real reason that marketing attribution exists is it's a CYA. It's cover your ass. It's so that marketing can say, see, we're responsible for.
Yeah.
Right. See, I have a problem with the statement we're responsible for.
What do you mean by that?
If you're an e-com store, then that probably, there might be some truth there. You remember when we put remember one of our clients, I'm not going to name who they are, one of our longtime clients, who wanted, we put a whole bunch of time and effort into building out their attribution model, getting it set up, programmed, et cetera. And we showed them that marketing was responsible for like $43 million of revenue.
Yep.
And I think they, of the $100 million of and it looks like there's no fucking way that I can go into my CEO's office and say we're responsible for $43 million.
Right.
Right. Because by the way, the sales executive is going to be like, what, that blog post had.
Right. Nothing. Yeah. Not nothing, right? But yeah.
So again, by the way, here's my question. What's the point of that? What's the real point of that?
Well, you feel like as a marketer, you feel like you got to be able to show your value. This is the return on investment. This is the work I've been doing. This is your ROI on that work. Like that's
so here's what I would say to marketers. And I do want to remind you for a moment, Jess, that this is the RevOps Show, not the Marketers Show. Just but we love marketers. I love marketers.
Yep.
If you need an attribution report to justify your efforts and value to the senior executives or leaders in your business, and you're good at what you do or better, then my recommendation is there are plenty of companies that need people who are good at what they do, that already understand the value and importance of the marketing function. You should go work there. Or maybe you need to up your game. Just, I believe in this thing I call Radcat. Right? I no bullshit. I'm here. Right?
Yep.
I've heard for 40 years that marketing complains that they deserve a seat at the table.
Yep.
And I believe that nobody deserves a seat at the table, right?
Okay.
You earn a seat at the table.
Sure.
You earn a seat at the table. Your job, if you want to be in leadership in marketing, your job is you've got to build the internal business case for what you do. And what I'm going to tell you, salespeople fall into this trap all the time. We think, well, I just need to have the data that shows. Can I have the case study that proves that, right? We just need the data that says we're not data creatures, right? You've got to build your case. You've got to do the work. Here's the work. Here's our hypothesis. Here's our plan. Here's what we're doing. Here's the progress. Here's what we've learned. Why does that matter? Don't talk to me about followers. I mean, the reason that attribution came about was marketers were talking about follow. I mean, not came about, but the reason it's become this go-to idea is that too often marketers were talking about how many followers their social strategy had. Hey, we did this. This got 3,746 likes, right?
Yep.
And an executive said, well, okay, I how do I spend that at the bank? I'm sorry, I can't allocate budget to you for 3,746 likes. What's this worth?
Right.
Right. And so we're playing this game to try to connect the dot, right? But what's happening is, I mean, it's the fundamental problem. You know what the fundamental problem of data is?
It's all in the past. It's looking backwards.
There's no data for the future.
Right.
The book hasn't been written.
Yep.
And so what we do is we have to remember that when it comes to sales and marketing, variance is the game. You don't want bad variance. Of course, you're always going to have some of it, right?
Sure.
There has to be a creation. And so as in essence, what's happening is we're reproducing the results. And we have to remember the data, first off, the data is not reality. And however we put it together, remember that this is the thing that any good statistician or any good data analyst or data science knows. And that is the map is not the territory. The map is not the terrain. The model is not reality.
Okay.
Right? I actually learned this. It's called surrogation. Surrogation is we use data on certain things as a surrogate to represent what we want.
Okay.
But because what we want is intangible and uncertain, and the surrogate data point creates this illusion of certainty, we grasp onto it. Right? I think the biggest mistake, and I regret that for about 3 to 5 years, I was a purveyor of this mistake, was we gave our marketers too much data. Right? I remember I used to be a huge believer, your writers need to see the data. They should know how many views each blog post gets. They should know what conversions that gets. I was on a stage in front of several hundred people and I made that statement. And that's one of the statements that I regret. I do not want my blog writers to see individual specific data. I do not want them to see it. The moment you bring data, the data becomes the objective. And the moment the data becomes the goal, and the moment you make something a goal, you shortcut it. And it becomes how many clicks did we get? It's Goodhart's law.
Right.
Right. I want my writer to directionally know where we're going. To me, have you noticed how much worse search has gotten?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's amazing if I want to find a unique item to buy.
Right.
It's great if I'm looking for a restaurant that I can't remember its name.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to learn something, if I'm trying to discover things, if I'm in my exploration phase, it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
Have you noticed how bad content has gotten? Not all content, but a lot of content has gotten bad. Why? Because we're all playing to this game of this is for search.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And here's what we know. If I have a number in the title, if I say the 5 ways to do X, it'll do better on search.
Right. Yeah.
By the way, why we know that? Because that's what it's done historically. So all of our tools that help us look at this and all of our attribution models and all those things say, and now it just becomes another retread of another retread of another retread. But then when you look underneath, what you find is all this content that is supposedly attributing at great numbers, and you begin to do a causal analysis, you begin to find out, are you ready for this? It has a negative impact on the likelihood that somebody who's not already buying from you buys from you, if you're involved in some kind of complex, high consideration sale. Again, if you're selling a walkie-talkie on Amazon, all this stuff works great.
Right.
But if you're trying to sell a program to manage the walkie-talkies for somebody that has a fleet of 10,000 walkie-talkies, it is a different game. Right. And so the moment you begin to say attribution, what are you attributing?
Okay. Yeah.
And by the way, if you're attributing to revenue and you're not a short-term, if you're not a short-term transactional sale and you're attributing to revenue, your attribution analysis isn't worth the paper that it's digitally printed on.
Why do you say that?
Because who I am when I'm not thinking about, when I have no intent, is different than who I am when I begin to think about something, and I'm different when I begin to have intent, and I'm different when I have decisions. So the thing that caused me to enter your orbit is not the thing that's going to cause me to buy. They're one of my favorite. You made me look up these definitions, Jess. That's why I'm salty. You made me look up these definitions. My favorite was time decay.
Oh, of the different attribution models?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, there's an attribution model called time decay.
I'm aware. I sent them to
Right.
you.
Right. There's that says that favors, like it lowers the value of the first.
Right.
But if I do my job right, isn't your first engagement, isn't that what gives me, like, doesn't that add you to my universe? Doesn't that add you, doesn't that elevate you from somebody who's never done anything?
Yeah, it does. And I would also say on that one, like, it's very dependent on your sales cycle. Like,
so I would say on all of these, it's very dependent, not on your sales
right,
cycle.
dependent on.
See, the problem is this is negatively influencing sales cycles. It all goes into the same. We're massive. We're looking for post intent. Right?
Yeah.
We're looking to catch. And again, if you're Amazon, you want post intent.
Sure.
Right. I will not beat our competition if the majority of the people we come in contact with are post intent, because a large part of our proposition is you're thinking about things the wrong way. Right. So I want to get you before you have intent. Right.
Right.
You know, it's funny. I'm going to be on. I'm going to be talking to Pete next week on their behind the benchmark.
Okay.
And when we were having our prep call a while ago about this, he brought up that our, if you look at our sales benchmarks, we do really well relative to on most metrics, relative to our benchmark group on most metrics. One of the places where we were underperforming was sales cycle time.
Okay.
Right. Our sales cycle time was longer.
Yeah.
And I said, Pete, actually, the concern I have with our sales cycle time
it's too short.
is it's shorter than our target.
Yeah.
He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, first off, there are two things. One is we're trying to build predictability into our process. And so if my sales cycle time is 7 days, how much predictability do I have? I literally don't know what my revenue will be next week. I don't know what my revenue will be next week or next, like, I have no idea what my revenue will be next month. I have no indication if my sales,
right. Sure.
So like, if I want to have foresight into next quarter, doesn't my sales cycle need to be longer than a quarter? Right. So the other thing is, if our sales cycle is under a certain amount of time, then what that means is we got there really late.
Right.
Right. Now, when you look at it through those metrics, and again, which this will play right into marketing attribution, you just begin to naturally adjust your sales process, your sales motion, whatever, to later and later and later and later. Right. You begin to look for efficiency. Right. And then before you know it, the thing that made you distinct, the thing that enabled you, because by the way, I don't care about my sales cycle time at the end of the day. Right. It's how much revenue. You know what? If you want to pay me $100 million every 3 years, I'm okay if for 3 years, for 2 years, 364 days, we do no revenue.
Right.
Right. Someone would look at that and go, wow, this company, they, like 99.99% of the time, they generate no revenue.
Right.
Like, I'm okay with that. I'll take that. I'll take that velocity. I'm okay with that. I realize that's not a real scenario, but but by the way, you know who's become one of the wealthiest people in the world on that philosophy?
Is it Warren Buffett?
Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett says, I don't care how much money we make a quarter, how much money we make I don't care how much money we make a year. The reason that they are the reinsurance company of, I mean, it's in danger of, like, they're going to be the only reinsurance company, is the problem with reinsurance companies is they lose $5 billion in a year. It's not at all unusual. It's just that one year they make $15 billion and that takes care of the other years. It's chunky profit. Right. And so we're so running at efficiency that we're overpaying for what we're having. And by the way, look at the people who are doing this. Look, what has happened to cost of customer acquisition? What has happened to productivity? What has happened to margins? As we've begun to enter these things, we continue to see degradation there. Why is that? because we're getting further and further away from what the actual cause is. Because what we should be seeking is directional insight. How can I make better decisions? That's what we should be seeking. That's what our marketing team should be seeking. I'll get into how a marketing team should justify themselves later.
Okay. Do we want to break down the other types of models? Because we talked about time. You went off on a tangent on time delay, time decay.
So here's my funny. So first touch means all the revenue gets attributed to what your first touch was, which by the way, you don't know what the first touch was.
That was the thought I had as I was looking at this. Is
that's dark funnel, by the way. That's dark funnel.
Right.
That is also why if you want to do first touch, and Chris Walker, I think is who it is. I'm a huge proponent of this. You should have one of the first questions you should have it on your forms is let them self-select where they came from. It's like, how did you hear about us? You should all have, how did you hear about us?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Last touch.
That would be the quote.
That would be
We've established that.
Multi-touch. Every touch you had.
Yeah.
And I guess multi-touch is, so if we generate $10,000 and you had 10 different touches, every touch gets $1,000 credit.
Right.
Okay. Something doesn't seem right about that. What happens if the $10 million account that you won accidentally clicked the wrong link?
I hadn't even thought of that. That's a good point.
Went back a second later and U-shaped. This was my favorite because it made no sense. It's first touch and last touch with some attribution to a middle touch.
Yeah, so it's like weighted and it gives first and last touch the most credit.
And a small bit to something in the middle. But then W is the first touch, the middle touch, the last touch with some weighting to the pieces between that. Multi-channel is just, instead of looking at the actual asset, it's looking at the channel and so on and so forth. And it's like, again, but by the way, here's the difficulty. What are we hiring this touch to do?
Yeah.
So here's something I'm interested in. What's the touch that generates the first, like that identifies?
Mm-hmm.
So it would be your lead creation. Oh, I forgot to mention another problem with all of these models and the nature of this and the process on efficiency is it all overweights novel. It overweights late and novel. The lead that I've had in my database for 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because they were looking at something 5 years ago and it was too close to contract renewal for them to really do anything. So they went dark. That re-engages today because their contract's coming up in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't show the same value that a new lead comes in. So it's that new lead that comes in later shows greater value.
Yeah. Well, I also have a thought on this too. This doesn't really take into account client retention and maintaining that engagement of your existing client base for renewal and to help avoid churn. Like,
so they will, I have seen this applied to renewal numbers, et cetera. But here's a question. So we've been with HubSpot for 13 years. Oh my God,
Yep.
I've paid HubSpot a lot of money.
In fairness, I love that that's your reaction to that.
In fairness, they paid us a lot of money too. Can you really attribute our renewal to, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So again, we're, and again, when we stop and we think about it, it's obvious, right?
Yep.
And the thing is, look, I get it, but I want to know. Yes, I get it. You want to know. You never will, because we're not logical creatures, right? So we actually did this work with a client.
Yep.
And we didn't just do the simple, tracking URLs, right? We really, it took a lot of work. We both agreed it ended up being about 10 times more complicated than we thought it would be, is we identified what were key milestones and we looked to attribute relative to those specific milestones. Now we did not attribute dollar value. We just attributed numbers. Now, I'm also a fan of, we were just getting into this, and then they lost some funding and other things along those lines. I love how hockey tracks points, player points. So in hockey, if you score a goal, if you're the person who put the puck in the net, you get a point.
Okay.
If you were the player who passed it to the person who scored, you get a point.
Okay.
Or touched it. Sometimes it doesn't even technically have to be a pass. And if you were the player who touched the puck just before the player who touched the puck just before the player who scored, you get a point. So it's called a goal, a first assist, and a second assist. And they all get 1 point.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And then total points are goals plus assist equals points. By the way, this is why the greatest record in the history of sports is Wayne Gretzky, who's the all-time points leader. If Wayne Gretzky had never scored a goal and only had assists, he would still be the all-time highest point scorer. So like he has more assists than anybody in the history of the game has goals and assists. That's how great Wayne Gretzky was. Anyhow, so like I'm a fan of assists. Now here's what I would do. I would look at assists and key points of conversion for key cohorts. So if I start seeing that there's this piece of content that seems to be touched disproportionately more often for high value, high ticket value industrial customers, I'm not going to attribute revenue to it because that's just a silly thing, right? I'm going to go, that's interesting. Now, this piece of content seems to be disproportionately touched for lower value items. I've seen, we used to talk, we've seen some pages that are, that are very high traffic, and we see some pages that aren't high traffic, but they're high conversion.
Yeah.
Okay. So high traffic, what can we do to get you from high traffic to high conversion?
Sure.
Right. So we have a hypothesis that says this high traffic page, if we can get you from this high traffic page to this high conversion page, we think X will happen. Now, you know what happens sometimes when we do that? The high conversion page stops being a high conversion page.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. But you can see how we're beginning to test. So like, we're not looking at it and saying, oh, this is what it is. What matters is, how is this informing your insight? Right. I don't want my blog writer to see every blog post because see the data on every blog post because that's not how it works. You don't come to one blog post and kabam.
Yep.
Right. We run plays. We run sales plays. We typically run those plays. A standard play has 4 emails and has 3 to 5 calls. The highest performing emails and calls are the 4th email and the 3rd to 5th call. So what do? We then test changing the order. Let's put the 4th email first. Guess what happens? Its performance drops far more often than not. Right. And we're talking about emails that didn't even register opens or clicks. We take them out of the sequence. All of a sudden the sequence. Now, does that mean we shouldn't take them out of the sequence? No, let's test it. Hey, if this email's not getting it, if it appears to not be getting any traction, let's test playing with it. Hey, let's see what happens if we make email 4, email 2. Those are all really good experiments to run and forms of attribution analysis. Get there. Let's equalize existing context. By the way, I would say if I were to do anything, I would overweight existing contacts. And the reason is, I probably wouldn't overweight it. I would probably equal weight it. But I would, if I were to do something, I would overweight it. And the reason would be, we are, it's the old phrase of it takes 6 times as much to get a new customer as it is to keep the one, as it costs to keep the one you have.
Yeah.
Well, we keep seeing databases getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you take a look at the percentage growth of database size, heck, if you look at the percentage growth of qualified leads in your database, those numbers are far greater than what's resulting in your pipeline growth, your revenue growth, and your profit growth, right? And what that tells me is, once you're in our database, and by the way, a lot of these measurements are what cause it to happen. We make one run at you, and then we forget about you. And then we're putting all of our other, let's put all of our resources towards the person who's never heard of us and knows nothing about us rather than
Right.
Right. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying, what's the game that I'm going to play? And that's where I'm driving them. Right. So if I'm using attribution, and I would call it contribution, not attribution, because we can't attribute the behavior, right? It leads us to have a false hypothesis that we can actually predict things. I know this appears to have contributed to it. That makes us smarter. That lets us interpret things. It's the insight. How does that drive the behavior? And by the way, the other problem with marketing attribution, the way that it's implemented, is it discourages. I was going to say disencourages, but I realize that's not actually a word. It discourages failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, someone I'm sure is thinking, wait a second. Why is that a bad thing? Right?
Yeah.
Because when you're playing a algorithmic game, and I mean algorithmic in terms of growth, it's not incremental growth, it's algorithmic growth. In a probabilistic world, if you're not failing a certain amount of time, then you are not succeeding. Right?
Right. Yeah.
What's funny is we live in a Pareto distribution. 20% of people get 80% of the reward, but we keep trying to play Gaussian games, bell curves.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep doing we're doing all these things to find the average, which is what this does.
Sure.
If we, I heard a new term today or this week, reversion to the tail.
Reversion to the tail.
And this is related to fat tail distributions.
Okay.
So if you think about the concept of long tail, which is one of the things that digital really brought about, which is long tail distribution is a fat tail distribution. A very small percentage of the distribution is disproportionately rewarded. So if you think about it, most of the hands you play, you lose.
Mm-hmm.
You win because a few of the hands you play win big. So most of the tactics that you do have little impact, and a few of the tactics you implement have big impact. You want to be in the long tail. And if you take a look in a go-to-market distribution, you'll see, this is Seth Godin talks about it, about being on the edges, right? You'll see a whole lot of little bits in the middle.
Right.
And then big losses and big wins.
Right.
Right. Well, you can't get to one side. You can't get to one part of the fat tail without risking some aspect of the. Now, what do? Let's lose those bets when they're smaller bets.
Right.
And then we can progressively play them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're not failing, then what's going to happen is you're the person at the poker table that plays for a long time, and maybe you get in the money, but poker is still the thing you do at night. Poker is still your side hustle at best.
Sure.
You're not actually making money. Your Phil Mickelson, who I just learned has apparently gambled more than $1 billion in his life. He's net lost 100 million. Now, Phil Mickelson has a lot of money, so he can do that. But again, you think about it, he's gambled $1 billion, right? The net of it is you're plus minus 10%. That's not going to work for a business.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so that's part of it as well.
Yep. So you've hit on this in places, but I want to bring us back to so how do you actually measure marketing attribution, or maybe we're going to call it marketing contribution now, and what's the right approach here? So
by the way, the term marketing attribution is a bad term because it's really asset attribution.
Yeah.
Or channel attribution. Right? Yeah. It's not marketing, okay?
Yeah.
So I actually like what you said. It hit me because how are you going to measure marketing contribution?
Yeah.
You ready for this? Here's how you measure it. Growth rate.
Okay.
Cost of growth. Margin. Productivity, which could also be looked at as capacity. So if we can sell more with fewer salespeople or fewer sales costs, if our cost of customer acquisition is going lower, if our margins are outperforming our peer group, and our growth and profit are outperforming, then we know we're doing something right.
That's
how marketing should measure itself. Now, are you going to say, Does that give you the, well, but how much of that is you?
Yeah.
The moment you ask that question, you're commoditizing yourself. The moment you ask that question, don't talk about being customer centered, right? You are fighting the world that you live in. We are in a complex adaptive system, right? Oh, by the way, let's say that I could measure attribution for yesterday. Let's say I actually could. Well, you know the old phrase, you can't step in the same river twice.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, I played this hand. Ask any poker player who won a big hand, who played it perfectly, and they go, oh, you know what? I'm going to play this hand. Guess what? It's not an algorithm anymore.
Right.
If you're going to market, and by the way, from a marketing standpoint, from a marketer standpoint, you don't want to build a case differently than what we're talking about, because the things that can be measured with algorithms, I'm sorry, you're not going to lose your job to somebody who knows how to use AI. You're going to lose your job to AI because it will figure that out better, faster, and cheaper than you ever will. Right?
Sure. Yep.
Our job as marketers is to curate and to guide the future. Mm-hmm. Right? How are we building lift into our environment to generate greater velocity? That's how you measure yourself. Measure on velocity. Measure on breaking down what is the model that you're following, what are the gates, what are the plans for each gate. And you know what? I get it. Sometimes CEOs don't want to hear all the details. By the way, you don't have to give them all the details. But sometimes they don't have the... Yeah, I get it. It's hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard. It's difficult.
Yep.
That's why it's worth doing.
Yep.
Right. And I would just say to the CEO when they're asking that question, what's our real objective here? What are we really trying to do?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Okay, I got a couple of key takeaways. So first of all, the standard way of thinking about marketing attribution is not the right way of thinking about it. You've got to find another way to show your value as a marketer versus this piece of content equal this much revenue closed for the sales team. If you don't have skin in the game, you can't win. So no risk, no reward. And you should be looking for insight indicators that allow you to create a hypothesis and test that hypothesis out versus looking for attribution on a specific piece of content and how that performed.
Jess, if I understand what you're saying correctly, is you got to have skin in the game if you want to stay in the game.
You know, I knew there would be a song lyric there somewhere. We got it in.
But this is your song lyric.
It is my song lyric, yes.
Right. Yeah, and I would say, I mean, the only thing I would say is like the statement, the way we're thinking about marketing attribution, we're thinking about it the wrong way. Mm-hmm. Because I say this a lot. I say, you know, we're thinking about it the wrong way. And so that understates my take on marketing attribution. If you're talking, because marketing attribution is like all the definitions that we read, all those things, that is marketing attribution. I am not disagreeing that is marketing attribution. What I'm saying is you're thinking about the wrong thing. And so it doesn't matter how well you do the wrong thing right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. If we're trying to move the needle, if we're trying to impact outcomes, if you're thinking about that, you're thinking about the wrong thing.
Yep. Agreed.
And so as we finish this episode.
With a less salty Doug than we started.
Salty.
Oh, okay.
I'm still salty.
All right.
As we think about this game, as we finish this episode, let us introduce our new, because we've been searching for a parting line since the beginning.
We have.
And so thanks for listening. And just remember, I'm sorry, we got to get it right. We're testing this out. See, you're seeing hypothesis in action. You're seeing tests and experiments in action. Thank you for listening. And remember, just say no to shitty RevOps.
Bye, everybody.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. Being a marketer myself, I know I have fallen to the side of wanting a way to show the importance to what I'm doing. But if there's one thing I've learned over the past few years is that you'll know if what you're doing is making an impact. You don't necessarily need attribution to explain yourself. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us. Leave us a review and share the episode. If you have any questions you would like to ask Doug or Jess about marketing attribution, email me at hannah@liftenablement.com or hit us up on Twitter @demandcreator. I'm taking this one from Doug, so until next time, just say no to shitty RevOps.